Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the September 10th, 2024 Board of Commissioners work session to order. Our pledge of allegiance tonight will be done by Commissioner Moody.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Logan, will you please do the roll call?
Catherine Carter, President.
Here.
Rebecca Moody, Vice President.
Here.
Liz McNaney, Commissioner.
Here.
Gregory Mole, Commissioner.
Here.
Sandra Zadell, Township Manager.
Here.
Megan Weaver, Assistant Township Manager. Here. Lauren Gallagher, Township Solicitor.
Here.
Isaac Kessler, Township Engineer.
Here.
David Duffy, Chief of Police. Van Reeker, Zoning Officer.
Here.
And it is noted that Commissioner Hall is absent.
It's been a while since we did a work session, so we're trying to remember how to do it. So next month, items 4 and 5 will be honored. Our recognition of Deputy Chief Ted Kiola for 25 years of service and Roger Smith, our maintenance mechanic, for 40 years of service. Lauren, would you like to announce the executive sessions?
Certainly. The board met in executive session on August 27th. Sorry, I missed the change in the months. August 27th to discuss matters of potential litigation. And the board met again in executive session earlier this evening to discuss matters of litigation, personnel, and potential litigation.
Thank you. Next, we have a public comments. Please state your name and if you're a resident or non-resident when you come to the mic. Thank you for respecting the 5-minute rule and practicing decorum. Our goal is always to give you the most complete and correct answers to your questions from our staff who are experts in these areas. For that reason, you have the option of enclosing your email address in the registry if you would like us to reach out to you during the week with a full answer to your questions. We have had some residents in the past who were concerned that if we answered any questions offline, that they would be left out. So we will continue to share any answers to the questions that were posed publicly but were answered privately at the following public meeting. First up for the public meeting this evening is Carl Vorwood. Is that correct? Come on up. The mic is ready.
Actually, my comments are in reference to next week's ordinances, 2024-03, 2024-04. Under the, I do believe it would be T4, the Planning Commission review for statutes. I had the attached letter that had come out for asking, can you hear me okay? For reducing canopy tree cover from the 15 down to 10. And also you're talking about the riparian corridor for the landscaping requirements. And I'll get into all that, what I'm talking about. And the reduction of native species. Okay, and I'll just bring this all into a summation for you. First of all, for our township, we're like over 95% developed, I understand. So this is in reference to repurposing existing properties?
No, this ordinance, well, yes, it only applies to any new land developments that come in. So it wouldn't be for like someone that lives in the township now and just wants to cut down trees and plant shrubs in their yard.
Okay, so I'm
only if land development is triggered.
all right. So I'm in the right thing because
Right.
what we have is we have a green agenda for demolition of buildings. So what you try to do is recycle the old materials on site, and we did that at Suburban Hospital when they did the expansion. So when they destroyed part of the building, that materials were then processed on site for part of the base. So there was less landfill going. That's the first thing. So something to consider. There were incentives by the state to do that. something that we would maybe encourage the developer to want to do for our community. For the riparian section, when you're developing an area, Department of Environmental Protection for PA is talking about for every acre that you disturb, you have soil erosion. Where is it going to run? It's going to run right
So
into
I just want to interrupt you, not because I don't think what you're saying is important. I just want to let you know that the Planning Commission requested changes are not what's been presented to the board.
right. Well, that's
So
why
it's
I'm
more green. What has been presented to the board is more green than what the Planning Commission comments were.
right. I'm just
Okay,
focusing
I just wanted to
on
make
this.
sure you knew that.
So that, okay, and again, we want to protect one soil erosion. So when you limit or remove that area for protecting the waterways, it's only going to run downstream. So I'm just giving you these to keep these into consideration for when this is presented next week, because I may not be here. So that's my concern on that. Also, we're talking about indigenous trees. You want to go with history? We basically deforested all the way up to Tobyhanna in the colonial period. So we don't have any ancient growth here anymore. I mean, you got to go to Penn State, go to the courtyard, look at an old tree, go to the Plymouth Meeting Mall. That was one of the oldest trees in the area when it was finally felled back in the 60s, and the growth rings on there and a timeline. Okay, you're not going to find that around here. So indigenous trees have been wiped out, and I really don't think that we should reduce the amount from the 75% of native trees for, again, if you're going to develop the area to reintroduce onto the topography of the land. And the other thing is, for the developer, I think they should keep 120% on their escrow instead of reducing that.
I did want to let you know that that's the one change on this memo that we did incorporate
Okay.
because it's been our practice always to be 110. So it was just, correct me if I'm wrong.
It's items 4 and 6 of the memo that are included in the draft. So
okay.
the change in escrow from 120 to 110%, and then also the requirement of 10% of the parking lots to be dedicated to landscaping remaining in the zoning ordinance.
Okay. All right. I'm just voicing my concerns for those and keep those in the back of your mind, because we do love our indigenous trees. We do like our clean waterways here, and let everybody else in future generations have it. Thank you.
Next up is Donna Kelly.
Everyone. I'm not a terribly adept public speaker, so I apologize in advance. My name is Donna Kelly. I live at 108 Barberry Road, which is between St. Rose and the William Penn Inn. I'm here to address my concerns about Barberry Road, which was a residential neighborhood, no through street, 2 cul-de-sacs, very quiet, very residential. Recently, I attended, over a year ago, it was the property at 645 Sumneytown Pike was sold. And it was sold to Dan Matthey and Ian Horowitz, DNI Equity Warehouse. Shortly thereafter, they applied to have that lot subdivided, and they received approval from the township. I can't even tell you what's been happening since then. I was assured at that time, I was against it. I did attend planning and zoning committee meetings. My concerns were what would happen to the manor house that sits on Sumneytown Pike. What would that be used for? I was assured that that would be a single-family residence. It is now a basketball team, a local basketball team inhabits that, which had 3 parties in the last month. 2 of these parties resulted in the need for the police to intervene. The cottage, which there are 4 properties on that parcel of land. One is a cottage that was supposed to be not for transient rentals, long-term rentals. It's now listed as an Airbnb, which is people coming and going all the time. The original house with the ball team also has a third floor rental. The newly constructed house is in every way against all zoning that I've ever seen in Upper Gwynedd. And I just don't understand how this occurred, how it was approved, why it was approved. Are there fines imposed when the students are having these mega parties, which I'm telling you if anyone's familiar with Barberry Road, from Town Pike through two cul-de-sacs, there was a line of cars. It was the last one, 897, which had coincided with my mother's 89th birthday. So I told her it was a big party for her. She should go down and enjoy. Anyway, so as you can see, my neighborhood has been completely disrupted. And I don't understand. I'm trying to understand how you guys, the zoning, the planning, could have approved all of these things. And I've learned that the company owners who purchased the property, they have multiple properties in multiple states. They were granted a hardship dispensation. I don't even understand why that happened, but I'm here to have it on the record. I'm here because I've seen people fight with you guys, not with you guys, but not fight, but for 2 or 3 feet because they weren't in compliance. We're talking 4 large structures on 1-ish acre of land in Upper Gwynedd. I thought it was 0.9. Someone told me it's a little over an acre. I'm not sure of the exact dimensions, but to me, that's just, we have so little free space, as you were just talking about, and to have,
Mrs. Kelly, I also don't want to interrupt you, but I do want to offer some solutions for you. So the first thing I want to ask is if you would mind leaving some contact information for me. So I'm the township manager, so I can get back to you. We'll have to explore some of the complaints that you're bringing to our attention.
Okay.
Absolutely, it's our job to make sure people comply with their zoning regulations. So
Yeah.
this is the first I'm hearing as the township manager, and I don't believe we've heard any complaints about
No,
this.
I've reached out to several of you, I won't name names, and have not received any.
Have you reached out
written-
to staff at the township?
Yes.
Okay. Well,
And
you can name
I
names with me
also-
privately later.
Okay. And I have, I've also been, Mr.
Reeker.
Rieger.
Mhm.
You were at one of the meetings, or 2 of the meetings that I attended, and the votes take place, so you can't tell who's voting for what, which is fine, and I get that. But it also is disconcerting.
What do you mean about that? That's at a zoning hearing
At a
board?
zoning and a planning committee meeting to approve all of these variances that have been granted. So basically what I'm telling you is that ship has sailed. This is a done deal, but my neighborhood has changed drastically. And the fact that we're now have kind of a frat house in a residential neighborhood is just kind of beyond the pale for me. So I'll leave you my information. I
definitely.
just want,
Come on
I
up if you
want
don't
this
mind.
on the record so
Mhm.
that when someone comes up to you and they want a shed that's maybe 4.5 feet away instead of 6 feet, take a look at what you guys approved on Barberry Road and look at the 4 huge buildings that are there and give it some consideration. So thank you very much.
If you don't mind, would you come up now to give me that info? I just don't want to miss out on getting it. So Commissioner Carter, I'll pass this clipboard down and you can just write it anywhere you'd like. Thank you.
I have my phone with me showing you. I love pictures of what I look at every single day.
we'll definitely be setting up a follow-up meeting with you. Thanks.
So anyone who may have come in late of a public meeting, anybody else? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is a presentation for 203 Church Road, and the applicant is here, so they'll be coming up to the podium here. Perfect, thank you, Mr. Cools. And this is Joe Cools, the attorney for the applicant at 203 Church Road.
Thank you, Ms. Adele. Thank you. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Summit ELU Church Road LLC. The property which is the subject of the application is 203 Church Road. You see a concept plan up there on the display. The property is approximately 13.7 acres. It's in your township's limited industrial district. And the proposal is to redevelop the parcel for a flex space warehouse use. The actual development will consist of two buildings, which you see there. One is 70,000 square feet. The other is 96,625 square feet for a total of 116,625 square feet. The two existing access points are being utilized at both extremities of the frontage along Church Road. The property itself is well in excess of the applicable dimensional criteria in the ordinance. I think the area of the property is probably about 10 times your minimum lot size area. The lot width at the frontage is about twice what the ordinance requires. The building coverage is about 28%, where the ordinance would allow up to 40%. The application's been in the pipeline for almost 2 years. It was about a year and a half ago that we did submit a zoning hearing board application because there was some zoning relief that was required. There was a variance necessary from the parking requirements, which really didn't apply to this use. And there were some setback issues from a abutting residential district. Not an abutting residential use, but there's a little anomaly that there's a district that juts across Church Road there. It doesn't have a residential use on it, but technically it required some setback relief relative to the drive and the actual building. So that relief was obtained, back in June of 2023. In fact, we had to go back to your zoning hearing board a few months ago to have that extended because your ordinance has an automatic expiration of any zoning relief after 1 year. Like I said, the application has been in the pipeline for a long time, and that's because after we initially submitted, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware, the school district expressed some interest in the property as a potential transportation facility site. So as you know, it's possible to run more than one land development plan at the same time. So the applicants just sort of held back and put on stall everything that they had done while the school district began to at least explore that possibility. They've decided that the site doesn't work for them, and that's when we reactivated our application a few months ago. We've been, because of the extended period of time that the application has been under township review, we've received a number of review letters, the most recent of which are all listed in a resolution which was prepared by Ms. Gallagher's office. I can recite them for you. They're a July 9, 2024 letter from Heinrich and Associates, your traffic engineer. We have a July 18, 2024 letter from Gilmore and Associates, your sewer engineers. We have Van's July 11, 2024 letter. We have a Montgomery County Planning Commission letter dated January 17. I think they were the only entity that didn't reissue. We have a August 13 letter, 2024 from your fire marshal, and we have Remington and Vernick's July 24, 2024 letter. We have no problem with any of the comments set forth in the letter. We're in agreement with all those items, and everything is a will comply, except for the waivers, which have always been on the table, which are listed on the plan and which are listed on the resolution. And I can tell you what they are real quickly. One is just a waiver from your requirement that preliminary and final plan be separated. We're asking for a preliminary and final approval together. And the other is a waiver from the depiction of existing features within 100 feet of the boundary line of the property, which is, I think, is pretty typical. And another waiver being requested is a waiver to permit grading within 5 feet of the property line, which is just necessary given some of the present conditions out there. I don't believe Remington Vernick has an objection to any of those requests. As I mentioned, we're in receipt of Ms. Gallagher's draft resolution. We're in agreement with everything in the resolution, and we will sign that and have it back to you by the time of your public meeting next week so that you have memorialization of the fact that the applicant is in agreement with everything that you've asked for in terms of your conditions. I have with me this evening Mr. Ben Barland and Mr. Rob Cunningham from Holmes and Cunningham, the civil design engineer for the applicant. Mr. Bob Rosenthal, one of the applicant's principals, is here this evening. Mr. Greg Richardson from Traffic Planning and Design is here this evening in case you have any questions. We did generate a traffic report for you guys as required by your ordinance, and Heinrich obviously has had an opportunity to react to that traffic study, and we have no problem with any of their comments, and I really don't think there are any issues. There's no degradation in service at any of the nearby intersections. The access points are an A level of service. And unless you have any questions for me, or questions that I can't answer that all these people sitting behind me can answer, I'll turn it over to you.
Board members, just a reminder on the process. Today is your time to ask any questions that you might have, and a vote will be taken next week. That's for the public as well. I think we're going to start with board questions, and then don't worry, Mike, we'll get to you.
Any board members have any questions?
I do not.
I lied, Mike. Now you get to ask a question. So would you mind sharing the podium with
Of course not.
Thank you.
Mike Falmouth, Upper Gwynedd resident. What's going to be in the storehouse, in the warehouse?
We're going to share this, right?
Sure.
Well, maybe that'll be easier.
Light is on, which mine was off. Sorry, Josh. Green light on?
Green light's on now, yeah.
Okay,
It's
good.
just like debate rules. I only get to turn on the mic if you tell me. The buildings are being built to spec right now. We have no ultimate user right now. I can't tell you exactly who the user is going to be. Any content is obviously going to conform with all your regulations regarding storage in the township. This is not being built as any sort of e-commerce distribution center, and it's not being built for any specific purpose other than spec right now.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Come.
Ma'am, if
up.
you don't mind coming
have
up
to
to
come
the
to the
mic.
microphone.
Sorry, for the viewers at home.
You okay if I sit, by the way?
I'm a little gimpy. So I'm sorry, could you repeat what you just said? So we don't know what's going to be in the building when it's built. Is that what I understood?
Yes, that's what I said, and I hope that's what you understood.
Okay.
There is no identified ultimate user right now.
Okay, so who determines what can be or cannot be stored? And where would those regulations, where would I be able to find those regulations?
Okay, well, that might be a question for the township in terms of precisely where you might be able to find those regulations. I can tell you that we would be obtaining a use and occupancy permit for any ultimate user, and that use and occupancy permit would be reviewed by township staff for conformance with any applicable regulations.
And there would be more than that too. There would also be like our fire safety code that regulates what type of materials can be saved in warehouses.
Is that public domain? Is that public information right now? Like where can I go on the website and
You can
find
go on
it?
our website to find all of our ordinances, but there are some regulations that fall outside of our ordinances, such as like detailed fire safety regulations.
Okay.
I think are in like a fire, I can't think of the code right now, but it's not all, it's like the property maintenance code. There's like a whole big book that you can look at.
Sure,
But you're welcome.
yes.
And the property maintenance code is on the website as well.
Yes.
I'm just.
It also all falls under the Uniform Construction Code and all the international codes.
And the limited industrial codes on our, is that right?
Yes,
From a
our
perspective,
zoning.
yeah.
Yeah.
When we have that meeting, I can go over that with you as well,
Okay,
just to
yeah,
make
no,
sure you
I'm
can
just a little
find.
nervous about building a huge building and nobody knows what it's for.
The reason is that we can't regulate that we don't have the right to regulate that. So applicants have the ability to come in a warehouse setting or a limited industrial and say, I'm building a big building this big. At the land development stage, we don't have the ability to regulate what they put in there. What they put in there has to match what their use is. Lauren, you may be able to speak to this more.
Also,
Clearly,
I would point out also that things can change over time. Even if I were here telling you who an anticipated user might be today, there'd be no prohibition against that user changing at some point in time, as is the case with any kind of warehouse use anywhere. But each time that user changed, and the new user would have to come back to the township and submit at least a use and occupancy permit and whatever other permits are necessary in order to ensure the township that all the regulations are being conformed with, including not only the township regulations, but the ICC codes, the building codes, the fire codes that are applicable statewide.
And is that something that is regularly policed, for lack of a better word? I mean, once that use and occupancy gets provided, what happens then? How often do we check to see what the materials are that are in that building? I mean, I don't know. Sounds a little scary to me, but.
So typically where the township's regulations are going to come in is storage of hazardous materials, combustible materials, that sort of thing.
Right.
Storing piles of widgets versus doorstops. I mean, that's not something the township
Right.
necessarily regulates. The township does have an annual fire inspection program. So the property owner, the tenant does have an obligation to tell us if they're storing anything that kind of triggers those regulations. But our annual fire inspections of these properties would also.
So they actually physically go into said building to, it's not just, hey, we don't have anything to worry about.
So
coming here.
there's two parts to your question. The first is about use and occupancy permits. So similar to what you were talking about that's happening in your neighborhood, we do not operate in a code enforcement, like we're driving around and looking to see if there's problems. That's a benefit to our there's some amount of over regulation that residents might not enjoy. But we do respond to complaints. So we have had issues in the past where people might say, hey, I see this and that going on in this building. Then we have the ability to investigate, depending on what it is. If someone called, and the most important thing that Mr. Cools talked about was the UNO process. There are businesses that probably move into new buildings and don't get a UNO. When we discover that they haven't gotten a UNO, we require a UNO. And that does happen pretty regularly in all sorts of different ways.
We would never do that.
Thank you for clarifying that, but you may not be the future owner. Just in all of the township space, in office and commercial spaces, do businesses move in without a UNO? Probably. As soon as we find out about it, we do require the UNO.
Okay.
And then there's the fire safety inspections as well, which they don't always happen every year for every business. It's like a rolling, we have 300 plus businesses and one fire inspector. So yeah. It's a hate, but thank you for that. And so we do try to keep up on that. And a lot of what we do as far as enforcement is complaints based. And believe me, neighbors know, just like you came tonight, they notice and tell us things. So.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, well, as I mentioned, we're prepared to sign the resolution, and Ms. Gallagher prepared. We'll have that back to you by next week.
Thank you.
Okay? Am I free to go? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, moving on, as this is a work session meeting, I'm going to discuss some of the items we'll have coming up for decisions next week. The first item is number 9 on the agenda that was spoken about during public comment tonight. That is our public hearings related to ordinances 2024-03 and 04, which relate to zoning and subdivision and land development updates, specifically related to landscaping and refining those provisions. Does anyone on the board have any questions? Just for the public's knowledge, as the public already did, which I'm so glad, they accessed the attachments. You can see the proposed ordinance that the board is considering and all the different review letters. And I know we had a presentation last month from the Planning Commission. Are there any questions on these items? Any questions from the public that we haven't already discussed? Okay, great. Van, I would like to ask you to come up for your departmental report.
Thank you, Ms. Manager. Good evening, everyone. If I could just take 30 seconds, because there were a few items that were discussed by Mrs. Kelly. She's not here, but for those of you listening in, If there's violations ongoing in any of our approved projects, when we issue an enforcement notice or a violation of code, as soon as we know that that's happening, we follow up. So we'll follow up on the 645 Summit Pike. I can tell you that there is anybody who's listening in, no short-term rentals permitted in Upper Gwynedd in the R1 or R2 zoning district. So if you see them and you understand or know that it's ongoing, call the zoning office. We will enforce it. It's not permitted. We have a separate short-term rental code that excludes certain districts, and R1 or R2 are among them. They're not permitted. The LI district begins on page 31. I look at it a lot. It's about 11 pages of numerous regulations which cover the use, environmental issues, separation, all the things that were shown on the land development plan. And then finally, back to Sumneytown Pike, there always were 3 non-conforming rental units in 645. The new lot does fully comply with the R2 district, which is the lot that faces on to Barberry. Notwithstanding that, if the occupancies are not consistent with what is allowed in our zoning code, we will follow up on those as well. Okay. Are there questions on what I've said so far? Okay, thank you. Then on to the agenda. Nothing new on Prospect. It's a pretty light agenda. Nothing new. No new land developments proposed. No new subdivisions proposed since our last meeting. There are 3 new zoning hearing appeals to be heard in 2 weeks from tonight, September 24th. We might have discussed some of these previously because they've been listed for over 30 days. 347 Haynes Drive is a variance for the height of a fence. 6 feet 6 inches is the maximum. Applicant has constructed for a short distance of perhaps 40 feet in length a fence which is 8 feet in height. And I think it was due to, according to them, they have an elevated terrain back there and thought that it would be appropriate. They still need a variance. The neighbors have been notified. 837 Summeytown Pike, Gwynedd Square Presbyterian Church. So the quick look is that they would like to take their static stationary sign, which exists, and replace it with a new sign, a portion of which will have LED messaging. So that's a changeable copy, is regulated, and they've asked for some variances for that. The 250-foot setback is required when you're in an R2 district. They're in an R2 district. So there are few residential homes across Summeytown Pike that are within the 250-foot setback radius, I'll say, from the church, and they're going to meet with those neighbors. They've been notified, and they'll need a variance. I think it's like 180 or 190 feet is what they're asking for. The sign pre-exists. The property pre-exists. Now, for those of you that might remember, this is very similar to the Sanctuary United Methodist Church application that came in about 1.5 years ago over on Hancock. Same kind of relief. Not exactly, but similar. They also they want multicolor messaging. The ordinance says at the moment 1 color per LED message. They'd like to have 2. And then thirdly, the flip rate, that is the rate of change for a changeable copy in the ordinance is 4 hours, once in 4 hours. They're asking for periods which they have established and will disclose to the zoning hearing board. So their flip rates will be once in every 2 hours or once in every 3 hours. So it's not the rapidity that we worry about that would affect the traveling public. That's why we have the regulation. So that'll be heard. Neighbors have been notified. Are there questions so far on that one? Okay.
Ben, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You answered part of it in the sense that one of the reasons why we have the regulation in the first place is to not disrupt traffic and not be distracted to the drivers. I see they're seeking a variance to have LED signage within 250 feet from a dwelling unit. Do you know what kind of lumens they're looking to emit and what kind of impact that might have on the dwelling unit?
Well, they'll only be, they're not changing for the time, Greg, of when the sign will be emitted. So it's from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. So it won't be on late at night. The requirement for the LED signs is that it be perpendicular to a road, perpendicular to Summit-Town Pike, not parallel to it. The purpose of that is that the messaging would be seen by the driving public and not by the residential or any use for that matter on the opposite side of Summit-Town Pike. So they're going to abide by that standard. We have controls on illumination, when it can be illuminated. They're not asking for any variation from that.
Do we have any objection from the homeowner in that dwelling unit?
I don't know. They had disclosed to us, the solicitor, their attorney, and the folks representing the church said they were going to meet with each individual. I think there are 3 on the opposite side of Summit-Town Pike. And I guess we'll get a report in 2 weeks about how that went. Anything else? Thanks, Greg. So then finally, actually 2 things. The last thing on the agenda is 992 McNair Drive. It's a flag lot, which is basically they want to add a sunroom to the rear of the property, modest in size, but it extends 5 feet into the required rear yard. The rear yard, in this case, would be actually facing out to Valley Forge Road, 363. So their lot is, the way it's situated, the front yard faces McNair Drive. This is actually a subdivision up along Valley Forge Road. Some of you might know it, a short distance north of Weiss Market. And so it's a single-family development. So the lot, the yard that would be affected is a yard that affects out, that is abuts Valley Forge Road. Are there questions so far on that one? And then finally, I did want to say that you've already talked about it. The other active item would be the Saldo amendment and the zoning text amendments, basically for the landscape regulations, which you've already heard about. Okay, that's it for me. Thanks.
Next up's the engineering report. Isaac, hi, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be with everyone tonight. Just for the meeting tonight, our item was really just for the back to school time of year. On the engineering side, just some things to point out for the public with pedestrian crossings, and in recent road programs, there's been some upgrades for some of the crossings near the schools. Just to be aware of some of those changes and be aware as you're traveling around with school in session. Other than that, happy to answer any questions, but that was our main highlight for this month's meeting.
Thanks so much. Under President Carter's section, we have staff departmental reports and meeting minutes that I'd like to present for the consent agenda next month. And then we have 2 very exciting items, number 18 and 19. We will be adding to our team, which is always great. We've been functioning without a finance director. I don't know how long, but I'm ready for it to be over. And I'm very, very excited to announce that Brian Shapiro will be joining our team. Brian has had a long career in local government financial management. He's served in 2 communities in the North Penn region, and I think we're incredibly lucky to have him joining our team, and he will be here next week for his appointment. There's more details about Brian in the memo if you're interested in seeing those. And then we're also going to have a motion to appoint David Conroy as our zoning officer / planning coordinator, sadly replacing Van Rieker when he retires at the end of this year. So it's very exciting to have Dave joining our team. He has about, I think, 15 years of progressive local government experience as a zoning officer. So in both cases, I'm very excited that we were able to get candidates that have a lot of experience doing what we do in similar types of communities, specifically communities in Montgomery County. So we're very excited to have both of those people join our team. They'll both be here next week. We also have approvals to the HRC. Dr. Rijo Joy and Anthony Lotzi will be appointed to the HRC. They were interviewed and applied for those positions. And I don't think we usually put those on the consent agenda. It's like we have 3 months without a consent agenda and I can't remember. So that will just remain as a regular item. Their history and experience is listed on the link, and they both have some great experience to join the HRC, which is the Human Relations Commission. For item 21, we have an approval of a payment to Clipper Pipe and Services for the building renovations project. I promise eventually we'll be done with payments for the building renovation project, but this is just our mechanical contractor. They didn't submit payments as they went. They saved it all up for one payment here at the end. So we'll be looking for approval of that next week. Also, every September, we review the minimum municipal obligation. This is the obligation that we, the township, have to fund both of our pension plans, both our uniform and non-uniform pension plans. So I'll have more to report on that next week. And we also want to announce budget work session dates. Both of our budget work sessions will be held here in this room on those dates, October 22nd and October 29th at 4 p.m. Those are open to the public and will be publicly advertised. Are there any questions on all that stuff I just went through? No. Okay, moving on to Commissioner Moody's section. There are several items on this section I would like to move to the consent agenda. The first is the MERC waiver request for work on Sundays in September through December. And the other items that I think could go on the consent agenda would be items 26 through 28, unless Lauren tells me we can't do escrow releases as the consent agenda. Great. So item 25 will be the approval of the resolution for the land development that we just heard the presentation on. That will be decided next week. And detailed plans and every review letter can be found by clicking that link if you have any questions about it.
Did you say all of Rebecca's is going on consent?
Everything except for item 25 is going on the consent. 24 through 28, 25 will not be on the consent.
Okay, thank you.
In Commissioner Hull's section, we have approval of a resolution celebrating Fire Prevention Week. This is another annual September item. And we also held a sergeant's promotion this past week, which I'm going to hold off on announcing who's getting that role till next week when we appoint the person into that role. But it is great news for our department.
I'm sorry, can we go back up to the staff reports?
Sure.
For the consent, you said number 16 is going on the consent, 17, but not 18 or 19.
Correct. And then 20 will go on the consent.
20 will not go on. The HRC?
Correct. Actually, 21 will go on the consent
So
agenda.
16, 17, and 21.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Into Commissioner Mull's section on Public Works, Parks, and Recreation, we will have the approval to advertise the snowplow and equipment bid. We do this every year as well. This bid really is just to supplement our crews if we have a really huge storm. We typically don't always utilize this bid, but we need it to be held in the background in case we have one of those winters that's like one blizzard after another, which hopefully we will not have. And I did not say the S word on purpose. I said the B word instead, blizzard. So we'll see what happens. And you can blame it on me if we actually have a blizzard. But we will be prepared because we will have the snow and equipment bid ready to go. Any questions about that? No. Okay, and that will not go on the consent agenda. Approval of Resolution 23-2024. This is regarding a Town Pike traffic signal agreement. And I just want to look at my memo. Okay. So Andy Heinrich, our traffic engineer, will be here next week to talk to the board about this item. We have an intersection at Church Road and Town Pike where we'd like to make a few pedestrian safety improvements. specifically to the crosswalk there and additional signage. So Andy will be here to talk about the improvements. There are plans, which I'm not sure if, Megan, if you can pull up the plans. What we're looking to do is just update those crosswalks. Currently, they are not the current standard for PennDOT, so we would be repainting and upgrading those, as well as adding a couple signs that say, yield. They're not specifically going to say yield to pedestrians and crosswalks, but that's the general gist of it. And Andy will be able to give a much more detailed presentation about this. We have reviewed the traffic incidents at this intersection. We haven't had a ton of activity there, but there has been some, enough to warrant a very easy and low-cost improvement. So the cost of the materials to do this change are about $600. It's not a large, expensive change, but it is something we should look at and the board should review with our traffic engineer before determining if it's appropriate. Yes, this is an intersection where Royal Farms is on one side, the dry cleaners on the other, and Merck corner, and then the animal hospital, gas station, yeah.
Does it make sense to hold questions for next week then?
I think so. Andy will be able to give you a better answer. I mean, I could try, but that's why I scheduled Andy. He just wasn't available this evening. Sure. There is a decision item, so I'll be passing that over to you, President Carter.
Okay. I make a motion to approve Resolution 26-2024 revised grant application for multimodal transportation fund grant of $100,000 for preliminary engineering of the Liberty Bell Trail. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any board questions or comments?
President Carter, I have a question with regard to the modification of this grant application. I see that it was increased from 75 to 100 because the minimum grant application was for 100. That would logically follow that we'd also be approving, since it's a matching grant, an increase of $25,000 for matching. Instead of $75,000, would be matching 100. So that would be an increased expense to the township of $25,000. Is that correct? Potentially.
Yes, I just don't want to answer that really quickly because I can't recall if this grant has a 50% matching or if it's a different percentage. So let me get back to you on that.
Thanks. I saw we approved it in July, so I didn't know if we.
Yes, I can possibly do a little research right now as we proceed through the meeting. I just can't recall the matching requirement.
Just says up to 100 in the
Right, so I
budget.
guess it is a 50-50 match. Trying to recall with our Town Pike mold. It's not, I don't know that it's a 50-50. The issue is that I can't have additional time to answer this question because it's required by the funding.
The budget impact says that it would be willing to match the grant up to 100.
Up to, yes. So as you're making the
If we're
decision, you have
75,
to
I
be
guess it
willing.
would be,
Yeah,
would be willing to go from 75 to 100.
to
So it would be
100.
an increase of 25 grand potentially.
yeah. And I can get you guys the specific answer for next week, even though you have to take action tonight. But so when you're considering it, make sure you're comfortable going up to 100. It won't be more than that, but it may be less. And again, this is for engineering work to begin for a section of the Liberty Bell Trail to connect to Lansdale Borough over by Pembroke Parkway.
Second.
I think Commissioner Moody
Do I have a
already
second?
seconded it.
Great.
Yeah.
Go ahead and take the roll.
Just taking notes, sorry. We have a motion and a second. Or any public comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. I'll now turn the meeting back over to our township manager.
Thank you. And I'll get back to you guys on that answer, on that matching grants. Just pulling my computer to where I need to be. Okay, I love asking you all to approve a change order decreasing a total cost by $153,000. So this typically, we do end up with decreased road program change orders. And that's because when we do the preliminary engineering, which Isaac could speak to better than I can, but I'm going to try, they factor in lots of base repairs that we might have to make to the roadway, which sometimes we don't understand exactly what we're going to have to do until the milling occurs. So we make sure there's enough money there in case we do have to do significant repairs. And in this case, we did not. Is that a good summary, Isaac?
Very good. Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah. And most of those items are with the paving and tonnage. So that's why you see a nice reduction when you don't have to use those at the end of the contract.
Right. Okay, thanks. So that would be the change order decrease. And if you'll recall, you might not recall, but when we discussed the roads program this year, I was nervous because we were a little over budget, but I told you, don't worry, we'll probably get a reduction that brings us under. And alas, that's what happened. So I'm glad that that's how it worked out. We're also looking for a payment for the roads program. It's the final program payment of $13,000, and that's another decision item for next week.
And just to point out, that final payment would include that reduction from the change order. So it minuses the contract, and then the payment would finalize the contract payments.
Yes, thanks. And both of those items would be for consideration for the consent agenda next week. Okay. Isaac, would you be able to speak to item 36?
Absolutely.
I know you're sitting in for Nick, and you might not have expected that.
No,
If not, I can
no
do
issue.
both.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, happy to talk for item number 36, requesting a change order number 2 for the West Prospect Avenue Drainage Improvements Project. This project, as many are aware, is for drainage improvements along West Prospect. Originally focused on kind of the constant flow that goes across some of those intersections that causes issues, especially during colder temperatures with freezing. It originally looked at trying to utilize some elements of drainage that were slightly outside the public right-of-way. What we've been able to do with meeting with staff is to kind of address the design to remain within the township right-of-way, as well as address some additional kind of historic issues with some of the drainage down the street as well. So it kind of changes the full scope of the project a bit. This change order reflects those changes. It has a requested an amount of $39,215 for the additional work that would now be added in the contract to be completed with the ongoing project. Be happy to answer any questions the commissioners may have.
No. Okay. And I think that brings us to the wastewater section. As usual, I feel like we have authorized so much action for pipe repairs this year, as we usually do. But this is another cured in place pipe repair for areas suffering from I&I throughout the township. So this is part of our aggressive inflow and infiltration plan to reduce stormwater from entering our wastewater flows. And I don't think this could go on the consent agenda. And then you will also have the open and paid invoices. And that is it. Any questions on those last items from the public? From the board? All right. Oh, sorry. Hi. Come on up.
I'm Beth Miller, and I live on West Prospect Avenue in Upper Gwynedd. And I actually have two questions about West Prospect Avenue. One was this additional work. I'm just curious, is that because someone besides me noticed that there's still a whole lot of water that is just flooding down West Prospect when it rains a lot? No, it's not. It's different.
So you might be noticing that because currently the inlets that we installed are blocked off. So that's probably why you're seeing it. We're not finished the project yet.
Okay.
So that's good news for you.
Okay. And my second West Prospect Avenue question has to do with some destruction of the road that happened as a result of the construction of a house down in the 600 block. It was a flag lot that went in, and I remembered that about that time there was some kind of ordinance or rule that got passed that when a road got messed up, it was supposed to be completely repaired nicely. That was my interpretation of what I heard.
That was a great layman's interpretation. You're right. That ordinance just got passed last month by the board,
Oh,
if my
so
memory serves me correctly. And I think that development you're speaking about is before that.
It precedes it. So we're going to have to live with what they did to the road.
Maybe not. We'll look into it. But because if it's a development issue and there's I guess a single resident. I don't know. We'll get back to you on that one.
Okay. Thanks.
But Beth, we'll take that under advisement. We have your contact information.
I probably should have mentioned this in the Parks and Rec section, but I just wanted to say thank you to everyone that came out to the carnival this past weekend. We had a lot of great participation, even though it did rain on Saturday. We had a lot of Upper Gwynedd residents and residents from all over come, and it was my first carnival working, and I just want to say thank you to everyone that came out and everyone that helped at the ice cream station and everyone, all the volunteers that participated. So thanks for coming out.
Special thanks to the police department, public works, parks and rec, all of our departments. Sandra, I really did have a blast this weekend scooping ice cream with my fellow commissioners and their families. I think I probably have to remortgage my home to pay for all the ice cream that I comped for these baseball and softball kids. So, but it was definitely worth it. It's a jewel in our community, and I want to say shout out to Parks and Rec for the drone show. For folks that haven't seen that, the fireworks are always spectacular, but this is the first year that we tried a drone show, and it was really well received, and the feedback and the comments that I've heard have been nothing but glowing and positive. So great job, Sarah Priebus, Director of Parks and Rec, Sandra, and all the commissioners for giving that a shot. So thank you, everybody.
Anything else? Thank you for coming out. That close out our meeting. Adjourned.